canon lovers and fanfiction readers and writers. Today I'm going to be finishing Beauty and the Chocolatier. First, chapter 12, Willie's Breakdown. Hey, the carriage finally made it to the house. Willie got out of the carriage. He gave Belle his hand and helped her out of the carriage. Willie was walking to the front door, but before he could knock at the door, Belle stopped him. He looked at her, confused. Why did she do that? He knew that something was up. He crossed his arms and looked at Belle suspiciously. Belle blushed. She never knew that Willie could look at her both confused and a little angry at the same time. Should she tell him? No, he'll get mad. Then she heard her voice. Maybe we should go to the garden, said Belle in a quiet voice. Willie looked at her with a raised eyebrow. He said, "Why? Is there something that you are hiding from me?" No, it's just," said Belle, stopping in between her sentences. "Just what?" asked Willie. Never mind," replied Belle. Willie touched her hand and touched her cheek. Belle looked into his eyes and then quickly looked away. There was always something between them when they looked into each other's eyes. Belle closed her eyes tight. Willie held her tight. Belle tried to get loose, but it was no use. Willie had her. Her heart was beating fast. Willie lifted her head so their eyes would meet. "Tell me, is there anything you want to tell me?" he asked. Belle quivered. She knew Willie had her right where he... Belle quivered. She knew Willie had her where he wanted her. It was hard for Belle. Her feelings were getting the best of her. She wanted to tell Willie how she felt, but she knew that there is something that she has to tell Willie. Just then the door opened. It was Hildegard, the woman who has been worthless to her. Then it hit her. Hildegard did everything and made her father distance from her. She remembered why she wanted to tell Willie. She heard Hildegard say, "Belle, who is that with you? Belle, who is that with you? I hope he will marry Gretel." That was enough for Willie to stop holding Belle. He looked at the woman, but instead of happiness, he got a rush of anger. He had a straight face when he walked to the open door. Hildegard was standing outside of the door. Belle followed, but stopped when she heard horses. She looked, and Todd and Ichabod came out. They walked towards Belle and stopped. All three of them looked at each other, confused. They knew that Willie had anger issues. Why isn't Willie yelling at this moment?" asked Ichabod. "I don't know," replied Todd. "Why isn't he getting angry yet? He's supposed to get mad," said Belle. Belle, Ichabod, and Todd followed Willie inside the house. Willie looked around. His eyes had a tint of angrier to them. Belle knew he was looking for his father. She was concerned. Willie wasn't saying anything. All he was doing was slamming and closing every door in the house. He was angry. "Father, I know you are hiding from me," he shouted. This was something that Belle has never seen before. Well, she has seen him angry, but not like this. It scared her. She's afraid that Willie is going to hurt his father. Belle wants to get close to Willie, but she was too scared to get close to him. Todd and Ichabod were close to Belle, just in case Willie gets out of hand. Belle finally decided to find Wilbur before Willie does. She went to his bedroom. Belle heard Wilbur in the closet. He was shaking. Belle quietly walked over to him. She knew he was afraid. This was the very first time she saw her father frightened. Belle looked at him. He was a grown man that was scared of his own son. Belle tried to get up, but Wilbur grabbed her hand. She looked down. Willie isn't from this world. Willie isn't from this world, said Wilbur, whispered to Belle. What do you mean? Asked Belle. In fact, both of you aren't, said Wilbur. Father, you are scaring me. What do you mean? Asked Belle. You are a god and he is the devil, Wilbur answered. Writer's note. This was an idea that I had for a long time. I am religious, but this has nothing to do with that. Let me know what you think. Now back to the story. I love her so much. What? You don't make any sense, said Belle. Ever since you and Willie were born, I knew you're special, replied Wilbur. Special? Asked Belle. Belle was confused. She never knew that. Being a powerful god is something that she wasn't expecting. However, Willie is the devil, and that's atrocious. However, he isn't mean or anything like that. She gets that she is God, but why them? Wilbur was still shaking. She started thinking. She was the only one that calms him down. When he is angry, everything makes sense now. It all started when they were born. They looked alike. They are some height. They had the same hair and eye color. They even like the same things. And they never get into any significant arguments. Well, maybe a little, but they were unimportant things. I can think of two people that are exactly the same. Not gonna say who. Meanwhile, Willie was still looking for his father. Belle could tell that he was getting closer. She looked at Wilbur. He was still shaking. Belle knew what she had to do. She needed to confront Willie. She needs to make Willie calm. Willie came into the room. Belle walked out of the closet. Willie looked at her. Belle gulped. Belle walked closer to Willie. She grabbed his hand and looked into his eyes. Belle and Willie's lips almost touched. Belle blushed. Willie touched her cheek. His anger stopped. He started to hug Belle. Willie pulled back. He looked around. He started to walk out. Willie, wait! Screamed Belle. Belle ran after him. Willie, wait! Screamed Belle. Willie turned to her. She was flustered from running. Willie took Belle's hand. She looked at him. Willie held her into the carriage. Willie sat next to her. He held her hand. She looked at him. Then her eyes widened. She looked back. They were leaving the house. Belle looked back at Willie. Willie could tell she was nervous. Willie put his hand on her cheek. The carriage continued to move. Belle still didn't know where they were going, but it seems Willie knows. So Belle wasn't that worried. The carriage made it to Willie's factory. Belle's eyes widened when she saw the factory. The carriage stopped at the gates. Willie got out and helped Belle out. She looked at the factory. It looked big. Belle saw Willie opening the gates and then walked in. Belle followed Willie into the factory. She looked behind her and saw the gates close. I'm going to continue to chapter in the proposal, but in another recording because I don't want this to be too long. Chapter 13, the proposal. After the gates closed, Belle saw Willie walking into an elevator. It wasn't any elevator. It was glass. The door opened and Willie went in. Belle followed him in. The door of the elevator closed. Willie pushed a button that goes to Willie's office and living quarters. The door opened and Willie walked out. Belle still followed Willie. They made it to his office and Willie opened the door. They both walked in. Belle was amazed by how the office looked. It looked so warm and cozy. It had a brown desk with a red velvet chair. It also had a sofa and a fireplace. There were bookshelves against the wall. Willie sat down in his chair. He was looking at Belle. She was astonished by everything, and she didn't even see the whole factory yet. Willie kept looking at Belle. He was thinking sweet things about her. Her lips were as red as a rose. Her hair was a nice shade of brown. Her personality was full of wonderful traits. She was kind, beautiful, loving, and sweet. She had everything he wanted. She wasn't like other girls. She was gentle and innocent, and she was delinquent as a rose. She was naive, but a naive personality that Willie could understand. Even though she was naive, she knew when people took advantage of her. Willie would never do that to her. He loved her too much. He wanted to protect her. Willie went into his coat pocket. He got out a small box. It was black. Willie looked at him and then at Belle. He smiled. Today was the day that he will proclaim his love to her. Then he realized that Belle could look at any moment. He quickly put the box back in his pocket. Belle came to his desk. Belle crossed her arms. Willie looked at her. She was standing in front of his desk. "What are you doing?" asked Belle. Nothing. Why do you ask?" he said. Because you look like you are doing something wrong, answered Belle. No, I'm not. I'm thinking about something, said Willie. About what? Asked Belle. It's personal, replied Willie, but we're best friends. We always tell each other things, said Belle. I'll tell you when I'm ready, said Willie. Oh, okay, said Belle. Willie felt bad. He wanted to tell her, but he had a plan. Belle sat down and started to read a book. Willie got up and walked over to her. He sat down next to her. He looked at the title of the book. It was a romance. Willie smiled at her. She loved romance novels. He knew that she wasn't successful at love. He knew that because of the beast. When the beast turned back into a human, he cheated on Belle. That's one of the examples of how people take advantage of her. She couldn't trust anyone or let herself love someone. However, Willie is determined to have Belle as his. He had all the activities he wanted to do for his proposal. He wanted it to be perfect. First, he'll take her to see the chocolate room. Then he will take her to the river. Third, he will give her a ride in the pink boat. Lastly, he will bring her into the chocolate trees and get down on one knee. Then he will say, "Will you marry me?" Yes, that's how he wanted it. The only problem is the Oompa Loompas. He loves them, but he needs this day to be perfect. He gave a little smirk towards Belle. He wanted to make a move, but he doesn't want to scare Belle. So he pretended to stretch his arms and put one arm over Belle's shoulder. It took Belle a minute to realize that one of Willie's arms was on her shoulder. Belle closed her book and looked at Willie. Willie wasn't looking at her, he was looking at the fireplace. Belle smiled at him. His face was red. She bites her fingernail. This was a great opportunity to kiss his cheek. She landed over and kissed his cheek. Belle quickly opened her book and pretended to read. Willie looked at her, then touched his cheek. He smiled. He knew that Belle kissed his cheek. Willie got up and stood in front of Belle. Belle looked at him. He held his hand out. She touched his hand. Willie helped her up. Willie led Belle into the chocolate room. Her eyes widened when she was in the room. Willie looked at her. She was so beautiful. He started to blush. Belle looked at him. She blushed. Willie started to take Belle towards the chocolate river. She looked at the pink boat. It was coming towards them. It stopped and Willie helped Belle get in the boat. They sat down and the boat started moving. Boat started moving. Belle looked at everything that was around her. She was so happy. Willie held her hand. Belle gazes at Willie. They both blushed. Willie started started to get closer to Belle. Their faces touched. Belle's lips started to pucker. Willie moved closer and put his hand on her cheek. Their lips almost touched. Willie kissed Belle and she moved away and moved back. Belle kissed Willie this time they both started to kiss each other. The boat stopped and they got off. Willie took Belle's hand. He led her into the chocolate trees. Belle was amazed about how big the trees are. Belle looked at Willie. Her eyes widened. He was on his right knee. He also was holding the black box that she saw earlier. She started to feel weak. She realizes that Willie is proposing. Belle, my best friend, will you do me the honor to be my wife? He asked. Belle couldn't make any words. All she could do is to nod yes. She nodded yes and started to cry of joy. Willie smiled and put the rose-shaped ring on her finger. Belle looked at it and started to kiss Willie. Willie hugged Belle tight. He looked and saw the Oompa Loompas giving him a thumbs up. Willie smiled and hugged Belle. He was so happy, but there was something bordering him. Ooh, suspense. Alright. I will see you for chapter 14 and finally until chapter 15 comes out. Chapter 14, An Unexpected Visitor. As Belle and Willie was getting everything ready for the wedding, they didn't know that there would be something unexpected. The Oompa Loompas were helping Belle with the plans for the wedding. Meanwhile, Willie is getting orders for selling his chocolate bars. Belle went into Willie's office. He was sitting at his desk. Belle smiled at him. Willie had his hand down. Belle walked towards his desk. Willie looked up. He smiled. "What's up?" asked Willie. "Well, you got all the plans done," replied Belle. "That's good. I can't wait to be married to you," said Willie. "Me too," said Belle. If you can't tell, I shipped it. Belle and Willie to make out. They stopped when they heard an Oompa Loompa. Willie went outside of the office. Belle waited for Willie to come back. 2 minutes had passed. Willie came back. It was late. Belle and Willie went to bed. However, Belle had trouble sleeping. She didn't want to wake up Willie. She sat up and turned on the light. She got a book and started reading. Belle kept looking at Willie. It was almost early morning. Suddenly, Belle felt nauseous. She quickly got up and went into the bathroom. She started to throw up. Meanwhile, Willie was still sleeping. Belle finally stopped throwing up. She sat on the floor. She was uncomfortable. Belle started to cry. Her crying woke Willie. Belle heard Willie say, "Belle, where are you?" She couldn't make a sound. except for sobs. Willie came into the bathroom. His eyes widened when he saw Belle. He knelt down next to Belle. He looked at her, then he got something for her. Belle gave him a weak smile. He held her in his arms. Belle laid her head on his shoulder. Willie took Belle back to bed. He sat next to her. Before he left, he said, "I'll be in the office if you need me." Belle nodded her head. The office is right next to their room, so if Belle needs something, he could hear her. Belle started to sleep. Meanwhile, Willie was thinking about what was making Belle sick. Then his eyes widened. Belle couldn't be pregnant, could she? No. Willie got up. He walked to the bedroom. He sat next to Belle. He started to gently touch her. Belle's eyes slowly opened. She smiles at Willie. Willie smiled back at her. Then he made a frown. Belle slowly got up. She sat next to Willie. "What's wrong?" asked Belle. "Belle, do you think that you might be pregnant?" asked Willie. "Well, now you brought it up, I feel the symptoms about being pregnant," replied Belle. "Do you want to take a pregnancy test?" asked Willie. "Yes, I do. But do you even have one?" asked Belle. "Yes, let me get one," replied Willie. Willie gave Belle the pregnancy test. She went into the bathroom. It's been 20 minutes later. Willie was nervous, very nervous. It's been 20 minutes and Belle hasn't said anything. Willie walked back and forth. Willie wanted to knock, but he didn't. Willie sighed, then he heard the door open. Belle came out, the pregnancy test in hand. Willie ran to her. He took the pregnancy test. He looked at it, and his mouth dropped. Belle was pregnant. He smiled at Belle. She smiled back at him. They hugged each other. They both knew what they wanted to name the baby, even though they didn't know which gender the baby will be. They wanted to name the baby Charlie Hunter Wonka. Yes, they had the first and middle name already. When it's born, they couldn't wait until the baby was born. Willie always wanted to be a father. They both smiled. They couldn't wait until they held Charlie in their arms. Oh my gosh. Okay, that is a cliffhanger. And I'm kind of in the behind the scenes on this, so it's not really a cliffhanger, but still. But that is the end of the chapter 2 for now. I'll get back